Hi guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we are going to see how we can create such a card using HTML and CSS. So let's get started. So as you can see in my style.css, we have an empty style.css, and then also we have some boilerplate code for our HTML. So let's get started. So the very first thing we are going to start with is creating a card. And what I'm going to do is that this card will just have this background image you can see here. And then from the left hand side, we are going to have this content section. This content section is what is going to hold the details about this card. So I'm just going to create a content. Inside the content, we start with the heading. This one heading says latest fonts. So we just create a heading level 3 and say latest fonts. The next section, as you can see, looks like a button, but this is not something we are going to click. Then we are going to add it as a div. So let's create a div here. And it will have two elements, the from and the price. So let's create a paragraph with the class of from, you say just from, and then let's create another paragraph to hold the price, which will be $9.99. Then finally, let's create this one is now a button, so we can do button. The first element is shop now, which is a paragraph, and then the next element is the right arrow icon. So if you need these assets that I'm using, so if you need this background image and also if you need this arrow, make sure to go to my GitHub repository, which is github.com/techwithtwin/tiktok-projects. Look for a project called shopcard v1. So go to S. This is the project shopcard v1. And then you can see the right arrow and then you can see the background. So go ahead and download this and let's get started. So I'm going to drag this from my other window. So we have the background, that's the background, and then the right arrow. So we are done with the assets. So let's now continue. So here on this button, we are going to have an image, and the source will be just our right arrow icon. So that's it, guys. We are done with the HTML markup. Then let's move forward to the CSS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go live so that we can see what we are working with, and you can see the arrow is too huge. Let's give it a width of 20 pixels, and then you can see it looks a bit nice. So let's go now to the CSS. The very first thing, let's link up the CSS file to the document, and then let's add the default CSS styles, which is a margin of 0, padding of 0, and a box sizing border box. These are just default styles. And then let's go and add a font. The font we are looking for is called Inter. So head over to fonts.google.com and search for a font called Inter. Click on Inter. So click on the get embed code, and then copy the import, and then just copy whatever is inside the tags. All right, so that's done. Let's now grab the body. So you can say body, let's add some paddings, 2 rem. We have already been doing this. You can see now the 2 rem has been applied on all the elements, and then we want to make sure this card is in the middle. So we are going to do display flex and justify content to the center. You can see the content moves to the center, and then font family. The font we want is called Inter. You can see it here on top. The name is Inter. So copy that and paste that in here. All right, so just so that this one was not visible. So we are making some steps. Then let's grab the card and give it some width and give it the background color. So we can go to the card. Let's give it a width of something like 350 pixels. And then let's add some background. So we can say background image. We use the URL and then specify the bg.web, and then you can see the image shows up there. And then let's give this card a minimum height. So you can say min height of 200 pixels. All right, this is what we have. So let's add some paddings between inside the card. So we can do padding of 1 rem. All right, let's also add some border radius. This is too sharp. So we can say border radius 5 pixels. That's fantastic. So the next thing is to make sure we align this background image to the center. How do we do that? The very first thing we need is to do background position. We want it to be in the center. You can see it looks nice. And then let's go to the background size. You also have another property called background size. And the background size is cover. We want it to cover the whole section or the whole container. And then there's something else that we always add whenever dealing with background images is something called a background repeat. This one specifies what if my image is not huge enough to cover up the whole space? Should we repeat ourselves or should it get repeated? So we can say no. All right, so let's focus on the next section, which is the content section. So in the content section, what we can do in the content section is that we can display it flex direction column. So we want to add some gaps between these elements, and then we can do a gap of 1 rem and a color of wait. All right, so this is what we have. Now the button gets to be too huge. So we can grab the button by saying dot card. Then we can grab it by its tag name, and then we can say display flex as well. And then background color, or we can say background transparent. Let's remove the borders. So border none. All right. Line items the center. Okay, we aligned the items to the center. Now, so let's make sure the color is also white. All right, so that looks nice. The next thing, let's add some background color overlay on this left-hand section because this is not yet visible. So we can go to our card and give it a position relative. And then let's go to the card before pseudo selector. We can say dot card. And then before, what we are going to do is we start with position absolute and then content of an empty content. So here you could add some stuff like you can add some emojis inside the content and that is what will show up. But in our case, we don't want that. And then we need to position it. So we can start with top 0, bottom 0, right 0. We want it to fill the whole section or the whole card. And then top, bottom, and then left. Still not visible. Then let's add some background. We are going to add a linear gradient that brightens as we go along the 90 degrees angle. So we can go to the background, linear gradient, and then the gradient will be 90 degrees. Starting color will be RGBA, which is 000.4. And then it starts at 0%. The next gradient will be RGBA 0000 and then 0. Then this one will go to 100%. You can see it has been added. So the next thing, let's add some Z index on this. Now we need to add some Z index on the content. So we can come here to the content and say Z index. So we can do a Zen index of 999. This one is commonly used when with people working with CSS, whereby we add the Zen index as we would want to. All right, so what I can see also is that the transition from one state to another is not always smooth. So we can copy this down, and then this one can go to 0.2 and then add 50%. So not much will change, but now we'll get a very smooth border. No, a very smooth linear gradient. Okay. Yes. So you can see there's some overflows because the overlay we added is overflowing. So how we can fix that is to go to the card and say overflow of hidden. Now you can see these corners are exact as we would expect. So the next thing is that we need to bring this content to the top. But before we do that, let's tackle this section. So we gave this section a class of, we didn't give it a class, but we can see it is only the only child of the content. So we can do dot content and then direct child div display flex there. You can see them. And then background color of white. Not white, but white. And then the color of black. All right, that's okay. Let's do display flex. And then let's add some gaps of 0.4 some paddings. So we can say padding 5 pixels, 12 pixels. Let's also add a border radius. You can see the edges are too sharp. Border radius of 5 pixels. And then let's make sure the width is fit. So we can say width fit content. All right, and then we can grab these individual items by doing. So this one, it has a class of from, this one price. So we can do dot content dot from. Let's reduce its font size. We can say font size of 0.7 gram. And then align self flex. And so aligning self means align this subsection or the paragraph to the bottom. If we save this, you can see it moves to the bottom. So let's work on the price. We can say dot content dot price font size 0.9 ram, and then font weight bold. All right, so that's fantastic. The very next thing that is remaining is to make sure this content is in the bottom. So how can we do that? So we are going to go to our card, and then so when we go to our card, then we do display flex now. So we can say display flex and then align items to the flex, and now we want it in the middle, so we can use center. All right, and then you can see these. Okay, so the next thing, let's make sure that these are visible. So we want this one to start 0.1, and then this one should be something like 0.3. All right, guys. So also the gap, as I can see, the gap is too large, so we can do 0.4 ram. All right. So that's it, guys. That's how you can create this. Finally, let's add some dotted lines between in the shop. So how can we grab this shop now? it's in the button, you already have it selected. Then you can say text dotted. We can't use text decoration dotted. What we can do, so what we can do is border bottom. Let's use a border bottom. So you can say border bottom style. Then we can use dotted. Okay, and then you can say width is equals to page content. Alright guys, so also something I can notice is that the text is too large on the button, so I'm going to look for the button. Here it is, and then I can say font size 0.9 ram. Let's do 0.6. That's it guys, that's how you can create such a card. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you.